Our next unit will be over evolution, which will include chapters 22, 23, 24, and 25. We're going to start by looking at chapter 22, which is talking about descent with modification, which is what Charles Darwin was a big fan of, at least in terms of his beliefs after he had sailed around on the ocean for a bit. So we're going to be talking about descent with modification, and we're going to start with some basic things that support the theory of evolution. Keeping in mind that it is a theory, and theories are not facts, but theories are theories because they are very, very well supported. So the three things that we're going to be looking at right now are the way that all living things are suited for the environments that they live in, such as these singing camels right here. Well, what allows camels to survive so well in the desert? Well, think about what you know about the desert. It's hot, it's dry, and camels, they can go very long periods of time without water. That makes them very well suited for that type of environment. They can survive there where other things can't survive so well there. Darwin noticed that all living things are suited very, very well for wherever it is they happen to live. And our example here would be with the camels. The second thing, the number of characteristics shared by living things. There's a large overlap of similarities between all living things, and one of the more recent ones is our understanding of DNA, and all living things have DNA. All living things have the same four nucleotides in DNA, the A, the T, the C, and the G. Living things even will share the same genes or the same sequences of those nucleotides in living things. Not necessarily every same gene, but they'll have some of the same genes as other living things. This image down here is called a cladogram, and this is a more topical view of some of these similarities shared by some living things. And how you would read this would be starting down here, and our first one is a hagfish, which is that thing, and then we come across a feature called jaws, and every living thing beyond that little hash mark there will be some living thing that contains jaws. So perch, it's a fish, it has a jaw, but that fish does not have lungs. We know that fish are gill breathers, so the next one would be lungs, and everything after that would have lungs, so on and so forth. And the third thing is the diversity of life, or the very large variety of living things. So those are some of the things that support evolution. As the title of chapter 22 suggests, we are going to be focusing on evolution not necessarily as natural selection at the time being, but as descent with modification, which is what Darwin actually called it. He didn't call it natural selection, he called it descent with modification, which is essentially the same thing as natural selection, to an extent, I suppose, and it can be defined as change over time. We can see in this image right here of the family tree of horses, or more modern horses, there are prior living things that existed 5 million years ago that are ancestors to today's common horses. And those have common ancestors back down further in the line. And we can support this using fossil records. But notice that today's modern horse was not one that existed many, many, many years ago. And in fact, we can tie all of these species right here together as all having a common ancestor the deeper and deeper and deeper we go. If we were to extend this down even further, horses being mammals, humans, which we don't see in this family tree, but we're mammals as well, maybe we're in a family tree over here, we would all tie down deep into some kind of relationship or some kind of common ancestor with these horses. So descent with modification really is exactly what we see going on right here. These descendants of this horse have modifications to it that make this species separate from this species and this one. So descendants with some changes. And we will be looking a little bit later on at how the environment is one of the big things that acts and causes those changes. So challenging traditional views. Science is really driven by skepticism, and skepticism is people are kind of like kids. You ask them to do something, just say no, and that's kind of what we see going on with this little baby here. She's kind of given the sketchball look to whatever's going on over here. So skepticism, you probably call them haters. So skeptics are people who do not believe in what you're telling them, and they're going to try to prove you wrong. And if you think about it, that's kind of what's going on with science. You have, the whole evolution thing that's being driven, and people are trying to support evolution with evidence saying, yes, it is happening. And on the other side of the coin, you also have people saying, no, evolution is not occurring, and they're trying to provide evidence against it. And either way, really how you can think about it is whether you believe in evolution or not, by trying to find evidence, we're all really trying to find and answer the exact same question, and that is evolution occurring? So continuing on with evolution and some of the things that led us to begin to consider evolution as something that does in fact occur, would be some of the early beliefs that humans had. One of them is right here on our screen. It's life is relatively young. Not too long ago, in the mid-1800s, there was people who widely believed that life was only, a couple hundred, maybe 1,000 years old. So that's not very long. Yet we have fossils of living things that are, tens of millions or hundreds of millions of years old. So it doesn't really add up for those that evidence of old living things to be around if people are thinking that life is kind of a new thing. Another thing would be that all life arose independently. And here's a counter argument against that one. Arising independently means that humans were on our planet as long as life has been on our planet. So life was on our planet 100, 200 million years ago, longer than that actually, and humans are around at that very time. In other words, life arising independently would suggest that we were on the planet at the exact same time as the dinosaurs were. And that may or may not be true, but there's evidence that supports that we were not, and there's not a whole lot of evidence that supports that we were. One of the big supporters of that would be the fossil record. And if we were on the planet at the same time as the dinosaurs, 100 million years ago, why is it that we're finding all of these dinosaur fossils, and yet we haven't stumbled across one fossil of a human? Could it be coincidence? Sure, yet it kind of seems a little unlikely. And the last one, our planet today was as it was long ago. Oddly enough, there was people literally 200 years ago that thought our planet was 2,000 to 6,000 years old. That was it. And the pyramids are older than that, so I don't quite understand how people could understand or could believe that our planet is like this brand new thing. No, there's evidence that suggests our planet is in the billions of years old. We can find that evidence in rocks. So with some of those prior conceptions of our planet and of life on our planet, we had people that kind of didn't believe in some of those things that we just talked about. And some of those people are listed on our screen here. We have Carolus Linnaeus, Georges Cuvier, James Hutton, Charles Lyell, Jean-Baptiste Lamarck, and we're going to be looking at some of those here coming up. The first is Linnaeus, who he kind of was interested in life and trying to group living things together based on physical similarities. And there's problems with physical similarities, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. But nonetheless, physical similarities is what he was working on. DNA wasn't fully understood at the time. And he came up with a system called binomial nomenclature, and this classification system that we have seen on our screen here: kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. Binomial nomenclature is a naming system where each living thing has assigned a two-part name. And the two-part name is based on the bottom two levels here, or bottom two taxons. This classification, by the way, is called taxonomy. So in the top taxon that we see on the screen here, and there's a few higher levels than this, is kingdom. and the kingdom is Kingdom Animalia. So in this level, in this taxon, we would be including everything on our planet that is alive and considered to be an animal. And as you can see, as we move down to more specific taxons, we can see some of these organisms start to get weeded out. Phylum Chordata, now we're talking about organisms with backbones, and sea stars don't have a backbone, so they do not belong in this phylum. They would fit into a phylum, just not this one. So we're starting to get more and more specific with the type of living thing as we move down the taxons, and the bottom level is the most specific one. And here we happen to be looking at Ursus arctos, and if you notice Ursus, we see that Ursus is the name of the genus in the taxon right above it. So when we actually have a two-part name, the first name of our species is the genus, and the second one is the species name, Arctos. You know humans as being Homo sapien. We belong to the genus Homo, and our species name is Sapien. So Homo sapien would be a human. There's other living things that we're closely related to, like the Neanderthals. And Neanderthals are in the same genus as us. They're in the genus Homo as well, but their species is not Homo sapien. They are in Neanderthalis. So the proper name of the Neanderthal would be Homo neanderthalis. Anyhow, it was Linnaeus that came up with this naming system and gave each living thing on our planet a two-part name, which is convenient because not every country in our world speaks the same language. There's not really a universal tongue, except when it comes to like these scientific terms here. So if you go to some non-English speaking country and you say human, that person you're talking to might not understand what you're saying. But if you were to spit out Homo sapien, they'd know what you were talking about. Next, we had Cuvier, who in part helped develop paleontology, or the study of fossils. And fossils were being found in the different strata on our planet, or the different layers of Earth, which is why we have a picture of the Grand Canyon up here. We can see the layers of sediment that have been deposited over the course of time. And each layer is called a strata. And we can see that there's different strata within it, and each strata represents a different time period on our planet. So fossils are used to compare similarities of extinct life forms to what we see around us today, present today. Some similarities are quite strong, and they help us establish possible ancestry relationships. And that's going off physical similarities, which is accurate to an extent, but it's not precise. DNA matching is considerably more precise, but it gives us a place to start with in terms of which two species to compare, looking for common ancestry. So by looking at fossils, similarities, we can say, okay, these two species look a lot alike. Are they related? And there are ways that we can perform DNA testing and see how many nucleotide sequences are hits or matches. One of the things that's interesting in these strata is that the higher levels of layers, or the higher strata, look strikingly similar to today's living things with subtle differences. But moving into deeper and deeper layers, those differences become wider and greater. Still similarities, but bigger differences than the top layers. Looking at our bottom part, catastrophism, we're going to pick up with this one on our next video. So that's what we'll be picking up on part 2.